Hello, everyone. I'm Christine Stevens from Upbeat Drum Circles, and I'm really happy to meet a new friend today. Sophie Messenger, which is such a great coincidence that your name would be Messenger, not
Good.
Messenger, Messenger, has written this wonderful book, The Beat of Your Own Drum. It is the history, science, and contemporary use of drumming as a path for women's wisdom, health, and transformation. So she's here with me today live in Cambridge, England, although you are French originally. So enchanté and merci beaucoup. And I wanted to start right away asking you about something that really touched me in the very end of the book. Wonderful book.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel it's this very important book that you are bringing us into understanding the drum as a psychedelic experience, as a woman's experience, as tools for shamanic practice. And we'll talk about that. But what I really think is great is, as many of us read Lane Redmond's book, When the Drummers Were Women, this feels like another extension of that to me. And
Thank
I want
you.
to ask you about this prediction that you put in the chapter called Echoes into the Future. And it says, when 8,000 sacred drums sound together, an intense healing of Mother Earth and our people will begin, and more peace will come. It's a 500-year-old Toltec prophecy. Now, I was part of an event in Colorado years ago where we tried to have 8,000 drums. And he must have read that prophecy. I didn't know this. We didn't
Um,
have enough. We had 1,000 drums, though. Anyways, I can't remember the name of the individuals years ago, but I remember him saying that it was a prophecy in some way, or he must have gotten that idea somewhere. So, can you talk about that?
yeah, I mean that, when I read that prophecy, it just gave me goosebump, that it feels like this a reclamation of something we used to have. Like I often say that I feel like drumming, singing, dancing, they're normal human activities. It is not normal for humans not to do it. And so the reclaiming the as it says, sense drumming. There's a citation from you in the book, drumming gets you into the now and like into the present and not in the future, where we live in a world where we're constantly like too fast, in our brain, too high in our heads. And the power of the drum is to reconnect people with themselves, is to reconnect people with nature,
Mhm.
is to go back to this idea that we're all one. And I think it's almost like the opposite antidote to a world that's getting more tech, more fast-paced, more information overload, and people are constantly overwhelmed, to a tool that makes it really easy for people to be there in the now and hit their own wisdom, as opposed to a world that constantly teaches us that the answer lies outside of ourselves.
When I came back from working in Iraq, and I was so amazed at how the drum was successful in creating these 40 people that I worked with for 5 days in a war zone that spoke two different languages, that I was really shooken up by how successful it was. And then a few years later, I saw Laurel Trainer's presentation on studying entrainment and basically showing with infants that entrainment creates bonding and kindness, most specifically kindness and compassion. I do believe in that entrainment factor. We're all beating
Mm.
together. You know, it's like that book that Lane always quoted, Keeping Together in Time. Why? Um, they march in soldiers march. It's just this sort of like entrainment or Japanese calisthenics. And in women, thanks for mentioning women, dancing, singing. Even the other day, I took a canning class, cooking together. I realized cooking together, I was feeling the entrainment of the cooking experience.
Yeah. Sacred craft. That's why women use
Sacred
the
craft.
weaving, um, spinning, all the crafts that like it's became really fascinating to me to see that before I learned to make drums, there was something around crafting that really slowed down the brain. And Jane Hardwick Collins, who wrote the foreword of the book, says she always makes women craft first before they make the drum. So they go already into a slightly lower state of brainwaves. And I certainly find that one of the things that brings me into a really flow state beside drumming is making sacred crafts, making things with plants, or making drums, or making rattles, or
Mm.
making drum beaters. In France, we used to have this thing called lavoir. So they were great big stone things where there was water, and women would come together and wash the clothes together. And there is a story that when those were replaced by washing machine, that was the beginning of people losing community, because yes, it was backbreaking work and it was done in cold water, and but there was this time where the community could come together and actually, because the task was boring and hard work, but then when you're in community, it doesn't feel like that.
Right.
Yeah. I think things with rhythm and movement in community is where people really are meant to be.
So here we are in this modern world, and you've really developed a number of beautiful programs. You can go to her website below. And I'm really curious about the psychedelic component. And I saw on your
Mhm.
website you have a microdosing drum circle. So can you talk about that?
Yes. So 3 years ago, when I was struggling with my mental health, I started microdosing psilocybin, so magic mushroom. So microdosing is when you take a subperceptual dose of a psychedelic substance. So you get no like visions or, losing consciousness. Yeah, you can function quite normally, but you take like a tiny, tiny, tiny dose because it's been shown to rewire your brain. Like evidence show that it grows new connections in your brain. The best analogy I've heard about this is, imagine if your brain was like a snow-covered peak and everybody's going down grooves on sledge, and it doesn't matter where you go, you end up in a groove because the groove is already there. When you take psychedelics, you sprinkle new snow and then you can make new tracks in
Mhm.
your brain. And so what I noticed within 2 weeks of taking psychedelics, the microdosing of psilocybin, is that I started noticing an unhelpful thought pattern that I had in my head that I wasn't aware of before. And then I did that, and I mean by that, hearing a very judgmental critic voice in my
Okay.
head because when I became aware of it, I started being able to go, well, don't do that, like having a conversation with it, whereas before it ran me.
Mm.
And so fast forward 2 years later, last year when I was busy writing the book, I I'd stopped doing the microdosing of psilocybin, but I had this idea that I could try to do the same thing with the drum. So my thing was I would drum for 5 minutes a day, putting a timer on my phone, but I would use the same concept that I had used for microdosing psilocybin, which was journaling, setting an intention for a 4 to 6 week cycle of something I wanted to change in my life, and then using daily intention with the before the drumming, and then using a light level of journaling around that to notice improvements. And within 2 weeks, I had the exact same experience of that with some plant medicine, which is suddenly becoming aware of a pattern that I had that wasn't helpful. And the pattern being removed just like that, being like hearing this time a very positive voice in my head that said, you know, when I felt unappreciated by someone, and then the voice said, well, the reality is that what you're doing is not appreciating yourself. And then as I realized that, and the truth of it was so powerful, you can read the story in the book because I go into a bit more details. The truth of that was so powerful that it dissolved all the resentment instantly. And then the family member towards whom I was harboring resentment came and expressed verbal appreciation. Whereas in the past, I would have gone, and you've not appreciated what I've done for you. And then, of course, I would not have gone down very well. It was like, as soon as it dissolved, suddenly the appreciation came. And so I started doing that practice for myself, and I started sharing it with people. So in the UK, over the last 3 years, we've had a convention of women drummers in November. And I started going to that 2 years ago, but this is the third year. But last year I gave a talk, and I shared my practice, which I call drum microdosing. So there's no using of plants, it's using the drum instead of the
Mhm.
plant medicine.
And really just 5 minutes.
Yeah, really just five
And do you
minutes.
close your eyes, use an eye curtain?
No, I tend to close my eyes when I drum most of the time, but what was even more fascinating is something I've not shared in the book because I stopped writing the book last year, so we do all the correction and whatnot for it and the editorial process. Is that in April this year, I took a group of 5 women over a 4 week online course where I help them do this process. And I said, okay, like at the beginning of the course, score yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 on the topic you would like to work on. So they all worked on things like, I would like to feel more peace. I would like to feel more present. I would like to feel, that kind of stuff. And I would have been happy with this improvement of like 1 point or 2 points, but they all got an improvement that was between 50 and 70% in the space of 4 weeks, just doing 5 minutes of drumming a day. It blew my mind. I know it's a very small sample, but I'm pretty sure that if more women took on this such a simple, easy practice, it's really anchoring the intention.
And
But
the
the
micro dosing is more passive and the drumming is more active.
Yes, and I believe that when you drum, although I have friends who are microdosing coach, said people also do that when they microdose. But from my experience, where I find drumming to be superior is because you build a muscle that now I can just imagine myself drumming and I can get the same effects.
Oh, yeah. I'll just share my current practice because it's lovely to kind of process these things together. Is it just shows also for everybody listening that having a drum, I've had my drum for 35 years. This drum that first I purchased when I didn't think I had rhythm because almost failed percussion in college. And I just bought this anyways. And it's been through the fire, it carries fire, and it's just what I'm currently doing is an 18-minute practice for peace. And because the world is in so much hardship and struggle, and I love your Toltec prediction, prophecy, what a great word, the prophecy of 8,000 drums. It's lovely to think that while you're drumming. I actually think that's
Yeah.
something I want to add. And then what I've noticed, and sometimes I drum, sometimes I play my flute and I sort of chant things for peace, or I just visualize the world, what I felt in Iraq. I visualize that happening amongst many, many, many groups. And at the end of this time, I've been doing this since July, I feel so much more peace. I
Mm,
didn't do it for me, but it has had a lot of great benefit for me. And
yeah.
the great thing about the drum is we don't have the lyrics to remember. It's primal. I
Yeah.
mean, all different drums. I play a lot of different drums, but I really love this shamanic drum or hand drum, this kind of hide drum that I can hold and move with.
Yeah.
There's a real benefit of this drum.
And that's why I found the shamanic drum to be so beautiful for people to start with, because if you play the hand drum by hand, you have to have a better technique. And then if you play the djembe, you have to have an even better technique. And I don't want people to think, oh, I can't do this.
What is it that's happening with women in drumming? I've definitely seen way
Yeah.
more women at drum classes, at drum circle conferences, at my programs. So I'm curious, what do you make of that?
I think that as a humanity is going through some major evolution, and we can't keep going like we've been going with patriarchy and greed and the overconsumption of everything. And I think the rebalancing of that will come through women. Because when you look at matriarchal societies, people always think that matriarchy is the opposite of patriarchy, as in matriarchy would be women abusing men, like patriarchy is men abusing women. And it's not like that at all. Matriarchy is a much more inclusive model of living. And so I'm not saying I want us to go back to a matriarchy, but because we're in a society that's unbalanced in its masculinity, helping women access their own wisdom is a big part of that. It's a big part of um, rebalancing the energy in our world. And I think it's for that reason that so many women are instinctively attracted to the drum. I noticed that in my drum circle are both genders, and it's about 80% women. My friend Melanie Sirat, who runs the convention, she runs one for women, but also one that's for men and women. And there's still the 80% women that the one that's for both. And I certainly notice an appetite, a real like desire for women to come to the drum. And often what's really interesting is the women don't seem to know why they. It's a bit like my stuff. It's like I got drawn to it, but you can't even use logical thoughts to explain what is it. And one of the things I have noticed is that women come to the drumming, and often they're very shy in their drumming. They don't dare to make much noise, and the more they take ownership of their drumming, the voice of the drum acts almost like a proxy for them to be able to reclaim their actual voice. And women end up, feeling much more confident and powerful and singing loudly and banging their drum loudly. A few months ago, I took part in a drum flash mob in a mind body fair in London. There was 60 of us. So they started with 10 women drumming and singing. I don't know if you know that song, but it's "We are the women, we've come to drum." And
Keep going. What's the next line?
we are the channel between the earth and the sun. We
Ooh,
we hold the wisdom of the ancient ways. We will bring peace to these troubled days. It's by Lisa Dancing Light. It's it's,
wonderful.
it's in my playlist for my book that you're in as well.
Mm.
And the drum is such a beautiful way of women feeling, safe, starting to find their voice again.
Well, it's been lovely talking with you. The book again is The Beat of Your Own Drum by Sophie Messenger. I think it would be fun to end this by singing that chant you just
Hmm.
buzzed over, and I'll sing you one of my favorite women's drum chants.
We are the women, we've come to drum. We are the channel between the earth and the sun. We hold the wisdom of the ancient ways. We will bring peace to these troubled days.
Mm. Woman am I, spirit am I am the infinite within my soul. I have no beginning and I have no end. All this I know. And I learned that at the long dance, Women's Way long dance ceremony that was founded by Connor Sauer, my spiritual mother. Any closing words or to our audience here?
Um, just encouraging women to get a drum if they don't have one yet. It's very accessible, as you said. You can buy second-hand shamanic drums. There's very affordable options of getting a drum if you do not have one, and then if you already have a drum, commit to a regular practice for yourself. Because one of the things I found, a lot of women I work with are like shamanic healers, and they have a practice to do it for other people, but they not necessarily thought uh, about doing for themselves, and then do away with the whole idea that you're not good enough because it everybody who's drumming started. You said yourself you thought you didn't have rhythm. Like everybody who's a drum woman today started thinking I had massive imposter syndrome at the beginning. It only came with very regular practices when it becomes normal part of your life, and you're like, you feel the joy instead of going, oh, can I?
And that's why it's the beat of your own drum. It's a
Mm.
great title. And I'm excited to listen to the playlist. That's a lovely offering and continue to track your work. And it was just great chatting with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.